What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. First of all, thanks so much for joining me today. I know when we're talking about a Packers season that is completely off the rails and that has gotten out of hand at record pace, it seems crazy that just basically less than a month ago, the Packers were up on the Giants at halftime in London. And everything seemed like it was at least going according to plan. They were about to go 4-1, and they had the Jets at home, then the Commanders on the road. It looked like there was a real possibility that this team would be 6-1, and then just everything has broken bad for this team. So I know when that happens, sometimes it's easy to maybe check out or just be like, hey, I need some time away from the Packers. So the fact that you're still here and we're still talking Packers is awesome. And I feel like one of the really cool things about this community and Pack a Day and the people who host the Pack a Day audio, myself, the people who listen, we're sort of junkies, right? We are Packer junkies to the extreme. And that's why we do this 365 days a year. But still, I appreciate you being here. So thanks as always for joining me. We could start in a million different places, but let's start with the real gut punch, and that was the injury updates. And the first one was the hardest hit and was devastating. There's no other way to put it. Rashawn Gary, torn ACL, out for the season. This now is back-to-back-to-back seasons, 2020 Bakhtiari, 2021 Jenkins, 2022 Rashawn Gary, where the Packers have lost an extremely significant player to their franchise to an ACL, a torn ACL. And there were others along the way as well. Kylan Hill, Josiah DeGuara, like Robert Tonyan, etc. There have been plenty, but these are three huge pieces of your franchise in Gary, Jenkins, and Bakhtiari. And now in 3 straight seasons, you've lost them to ACL injuries. And that just beyond sucks. And we are still dealing with today the repercussions of David Bakhtiari's injury. And that was an ACL, an MCL, and a bunch of stuff. And then a lot of stuff went wrong after that. So that is not just a ACL. In fact, Bakhtiari's gone out of his way to say that his ACL is healed, but clearly he has never been the same player since. Elton Jenkins, you can tell, is still recovering from his ACL injury. He has not looked the same, although some good news out of this game is that I thought he looked the best that he is yet to play this season. So that's some good news that we'll get into. But he has not been the same player at all since coming back from his ACL. And now Rashawn Gary. And if you want to talk about the worst thing that could happen to this team at this point, you can make a very strong argument that there is nothing worse than Rashawn Gary tearing an ACL. That injury to that player, because this is one of your key young pieces for the future of your franchise. He's playing at a very high level. And now you're talking about an injury that will potentially go into next season and probably not have him be the same player, at least early next season. It's going to take him probably a good chunk of next season to get back to, trying to play the way he was before the injury. So just an absolute gut punch with Rashawn Gary being out. And again, torn ACL out for the year. Romeo Doubs, some good news, some bad news, high ankle sprain. He's going to be out multiple weeks. The good news is it's not a season-ending injury. He didn't break it. He'll be back at some point this year. But those have the ability to linger a little bit. And another just huge bummer here, right? We're now at the point where we want to see probably as many young players as we can just to start evaluating and just getting them reps to hopefully see them improve. Sometimes, well, not sometimes, the best way to improve as a young player is to just go through the reps and get as many as you can and start improving as a player. So these lost reps for Romeo Doubs, especially at this point when there's not a ton still left to watch for the remainder of the season other than players progressing for future seasons, having Romeo Doubs go down, also a bit of a gut punch, but thankfully not season ending, and he should be back at some point later this year. Whether or not they put him on IR will be interesting. Could be probably a little bit less than a 4-week injury. Could be right around there. My guess is they don't, but we'll have to keep an eye on that as well. Eric Stokes. Sounds like there is legitimate long-term concern for Eric Stokes, but they don't have a definitive answer right yet, or as of yet. And it sounds like this is going to be something that they're probably going to get some opinions on My guess is if there's any concern whatsoever, they probably are extra cautious and shut him down. And at minimum, he's probably going to miss a significant period of time, whether he comes back this season or not. So that is another blow. And again, another young player in year 2 who is struggling this season, and you just want to see get more reps. And the crazy, like, I DM'd a couple people about this. Eric Stokes has basically avoided contact and tackling to a ridiculously poor degree all season long. He finally goes up, makes an aggressive tackle in the run game, fills his gap, and he gets bent over backwards and, like, probably, if not tore his ACL or something crazy, like, probably has a significant injury because of it. So go figure. Like, the one time he actually gets up and makes legitimate contact, makes a tackle, and seeks it out, he gets an injury from it. So, I mean, that's just the way this Packers season has been going. There was some good news on the injury front. Aaron Jones has the potential to play this week. We'll see how aggressive they are with him. They were very cautious with him in that Lions game, but he has the potential to play this week. We'll see there. And then Christian Watson did not have a concussion. Probably the best news of the injury report. He did not have a concussion. They kept him out of an abundance of caution, which is 100% the right move. And he should be good to go this week, assuming he didn't suffer some other injury that we don't know about. But his thought to be concussion was not a concussion, and that will not keep him out of the lineup moving forward. So some good news there with Christian Watson. All right, it is Tuesday, so you know what that means. We will jump very aggressively into the tape and what I saw. So again, watched it live, rewatched it on the condensed version, watched every player on every play, every snap, graded it, reviewed it, watched everything that went on with a fine-tooth comb, and I will present to you my findings. If you want to get the full article, make sure to check it out over on PackerReport.com, where I go through everything and all the grades. This is just kind of a snippet of some of the grades. So first of all, the tape as a whole. There have been worse games. Clearly, there have been worse games for the defense. There have been far worse games for the offense. There have been far more poorly graded games overall. This was probably the most concerning tape that I've ever had the pleasure of watching and grading. There were so many times that I'm watching a play develop, and 90% of this was on offense, where I'm watching a play develop and I'm just throwing my hands up going, holy bleep, what is happening? I just want to bring you through some of the issues on offense. Let's start with wide receivers. Sammy Watkins was abysmal. We'll get to that more in just a moment. But I have never seen so many wide receivers on the ground in one game ever. Like the Lions corners, the much maligned Lions defensive backs, by the way, mauled these Packers receivers legally, I might add. And like to the point where receivers were just on the ground or could not get off press coverage. It was like this was the first time these players had seen press coverage in their life. And I'm not talking about Toure and Watson. Toure was a part of it, no question. But I'm not talking about just rookies here. Sammy Watkins, Alan Lazard, it was all of them. Like, if I have time, I'm going to go through and do a clip of like every single time a wide receiver was on the ground. It was crazy. Josh Myers snapping the ball at the wrong time on the wrong count. Rodgers barking at him for that. Like I said, wide receivers, even if they're not on the ground, not able to get off press coverage. Wide receivers not being able to come up with catches at the catch point. Wide receivers not completing like the scramble drill and continuing to open up after the play breaks down a little bit. You've got A.J. Dillon with a fumble, Samori Toure with a fumble. You've got offensive linemen who aren't always communicating. And then, of course, Aaron Rodgers missing passes, missing throws, interceptions. Like, you've got the play where Rodgers is throwing the fade and Sammy Watkins is running the slant. By the way, go watch that play. Elton Jenkins was fired up. I don't know if he was upset that they didn't run the ball on the run pass option or that Watkins ran the wrong route or that but he was fired up after that play. Go check that out at some point. I've never seen Elton Jenkins that fired up. And that was the other thing. You can just tell this offense has no faith in each other. Rodgers is chewing out everyone left and right. There's zero confidence, and I mean zero confidence of what's happening on offense. And the attention to details, the mental errors, or the lack of attention to details, I should say, the mental errors, the wrong snaps, the wrong routes, just all of it is as bad as you can possibly imagine. This was extremely concerning, and there were plays there for this offense to make. I mean, over and over and over. And as I mentioned yesterday, this Packers team beat themselves. I'll just say it once again. This Lions team did not play a good game at all. I didn't think their offense played anywhere near good football, and their defense played well at times, but it wasn't like they did anything exotic or crazy. They played press man coverage, the same thing that's beaten the Packers every single week so far since basically the second half of the Tampa Bay game, and they can't do anything about it. And yet, the Lions didn't do anything special. They didn't do anything great. They didn't play a great brand of football. This is still a very bad Lions team. They didn't even play well, and they beat the Packers. I mean, what more do you want to know? That is the state of this Green Bay team. And two things that I took away, and I've talked about this first one already, is that they lack an identity. And Aaron Nagler and I talked about this as well on Let's Talk Football on Cheesehead TV. But this is a team that cannot rely on everything, and everything is so insanely difficult. And again, I'm more talking offense here, but there's nothing that they can do over and over that they can just lean on. They're looking for mismatches. They're letting Rodgers check out of things at the line of scrimmage. None of that's working. Wide receivers can't win on their routes. The line doesn't block well enough to feel like you're comfortable running against stacked boxes and to run the ball consistently. You're not giving Aaron Jones the ball enough. We know that. You don't have a deep threat. You don't have a playmaker. This isn't an intimidating defense. Your special team's not going to help you out. There's nothing that this team does overall that gives you any identity or any semblance of this team's going to be good moving forward, or they can figure things out. And the other thing that was very apparent to me on this tape was, and just throughout the season, but certainly on this tape as well, this team is soft. And there's different types of teams, different styles of teams. You can be a physical team, you can be a finesse team, and there's ways to win with both of those types of teams. I think some of those Colts teams, and I'm not saying those Colts teams weren't physical, or the Rams' greatest show on turf wasn't physical at times, but Adam Archuleta, Bob Sanders, those are good, examples of players who are physical within the realms of a finesse team, but those were finesse teams, dome teams, obviously Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Hall of Fame running backs, Hall of Fame wide receivers. Those were finesse football teams, and their defenses were made up to stop the pass. They weren't made up to stop the run and be physical against the run. This Packers team is certainly not a physical team. They are more of a finesse team, but they don't have any of the benefits that come along with being a finesse team. They don't have the greatest show on turf. They don't have explosive playmakers. They don't have insane speed. They don't have suddenness. They don't have any of this. So they are a finesse team that doesn't have the ability to play finesse football. And the defense is certainly they're probably set up more to be like those teams where you stop the pass. They can't force other teams to pass the ball because they can't score on offense. And when I say that this team is soft, they can't move defensive linemen consistently. If you're just talking about one-on-one power running game, this is not an offensive line that can just take your top defensive lineman in the league and just move them off the ball. They just don't have those bodies up front. So they can't move defensive linemen in the run game. This is not a team that breaks tackles. A.J. Dillon is supposed to be that guy. He's not. He does not break tackles consistently. Aaron Jones is slippery and he avoids tackles, but he's not a broken tackle guy more often than not. You don't have wide receivers that break tackles. You certainly don't have tight ends that break tackles. So that's an issue. You can't hold up at the line of scrimmage on defense. You're not a run-stopping defense. You can't tackle. You can't withstand press coverage. You can't catch through contact. You can't overcome adversity. You are soft. You are a soft football team, and you have no identity, and you don't have playmakers. And the other thing that was very easily apparent in this game is just how difficult everything is. So everything takes these long drives. Once again, I actually talked about it when I went back and looked at all the different scores from last season of how many 10 play, 11 play, 12 play, 15 play drives, 80-yard drives, 85-yard drives that this offense had to put together. That's not sustainable. You have to hit explosives and you have to get touchdowns out of it. They finally hit an explosive to Allen Lazard down the sideline, almost a 50-yard touchdown, gets stopped at the 1-inch yard line, and you can't you have 4 chances to get in the end zone, you can't do it. Like, everything is so difficult. And probably the best example of this is the touchdown to Allen Lazard. An absolutely beautiful, perfect, pristine ball from Aaron Rodgers. We're going to talk a lot about Aaron Rodgers. That ball was gorgeous. There's no two ways about it. Allen Lazard is covered on the play. Jeff Okudah has phenomenal coverage. It takes an almost perfect pass under duress with fantastic coverage and Lazard going up or like making a play on the ball as well to just get a touchdown. Like, that was their lone touchdown, and it took a Herculean play just to get 7 points on the board. That is another just example of where this team is and how difficult things are for this team. All right, let's go through some grades quick. Defensively, and this is just another kick to the gut, the best player on defense, Rashawn Gary, plus 0.75. My top-rated defender this week. Number 2, Rasul Douglas, plus 0.5. And then number 3, Isaiah McDuffie. Really nice game for McDuffie, plus 0.45. I don't know that McDuffie is ever going to be a starting caliber inside linebacker, but he is a heck of a backup inside linebacker and has the ability to contribute on special teams clearly. I thought he was a good run defender. Like, he just did everything that was asked of him. And yeah, he was easily the top linebacker in this game for the Packers. He was able to get off of blocks like Quay and Barnes were not able to, and he just showed some speed and like instincts. It was fun to watch. He had a really nice game. So Gary, Douglas, and McDuffie, top 3, and then honorable mention to Jair Alexander. The pick kind of saved Alexander. He did not have his best game overall, but the pick really was should have been a huge play in the game. Unfortunately, Rodgers threw a pick right after it a couple plays later, but that should have been a huge play that should have got Green Bay points. But outside of that, it was a bit of a struggle for Jair, but that interception was enough to get him in the honorable mention group with a plus 0.4 grade. Bottom 3 graded defenders, Darnell Savage, once again, negative 1.3. Quay Walker, negative 0.9. And Jarron Reed, negative 0.7. With sort of an honorable, or not honorable, but you know what I mean, honorable mention to Kenny Clark. This is his second straight poor game in a row. I don't know if he's fighting an injury. I don't know if he's just frustrated. I don't know. But these 2 games from Kenny Clark looked nothing like the Kenny Clark we saw in the first 7 games of the season. Like, just night and day difference. So not sure what's up with that. Kenny will have stretches from time to time where he goes through it a little bit and like isn't his normal self. That's not totally abnormal, but the juxtaposition of the first 7 weeks, Kenny Clark, where he was just tearing stuff up, versus the last 2 weeks where he's done almost nothing, definitely noticeable, and it's really tough to figure out why and what happened, but that is at least noteworthy. Quay Walker, as far as some of the players who struggle in this game, just very much thinking, not getting to his spots, easily blocked one-on-one, not getting off of blocks. Just, you could tell he obviously was calling the plays, doing a lot of thinking. Like we talked about Isaiah McDuffie playing instinctual football. Quay Walker was not quite there yet in this game. And he had a really good game a week ago before getting ejected, and probably his best game of his career the week before that. So he's starting to put together some good play. This week, things kind of regressed back a little bit. So hopefully he can get it turned around next week and have a really nice game against the Dallas Cowboys. On offense, Yosh Nijman plus 0.75. I thought this was a really fine game from Yosh, and overall the offensive line not too shabby in this one. Run blocking not ideal, but pass protection they held up pretty darn well. Number 2, Elton Jenkins plus 0.5. Like I said, was easily the best game for Jenkins coming back from injury. So hopefully that is a positive step moving forward and he can continue to trend in the right direction. And then Mercedes Lewis again, just Mr. Consistent, plus 0.45. What he can do against defensive linemen and just his blocking prowess is just unbelievable. And he just does it at such a high level every week. Also had the really impressive catch on, I don't know if it was 3rd down, but Rodgers threw it really high and Big Dog used every inch of his 6'9" frame to go up and get the ball and come down with a big catch. So nice game from Mercedes as well. My 3 lowest graded players, number 1, Sammy Watkins, negative 2.95. This was the worst wide receiver tape I have ever seen. Wrong routes, can't get off a press, doesn't have any juice, dropped a pass. Like, some of the stuff he was doing in his routes was like, it would have been akin to if like a 10-year-old watched Devontae Adams play wide receiver and then like never played football before, went out in his backyard and tried to emulate what he saw Devontae Adams do and had no idea how to actually coordinate everything. That's what Sammy Watkins looked like. It was unbelievable. He was like doing stuff like just trying to juke people out, and I don't even know how to explain it. It was awful. Let me just say this. There is zero reason, I mean zero reason, to keep Sammy Watkins on this team right now. He's done. He is done. He's got nothing left. And yeah, you're an NFL wide receiver, so he'll probably have, if you continue to start him, he'll probably have, maybe 10 or 12 more catches. Maybe one of those is a 30-yard touchdown or something. He has nothing left to give that is going to help your team. It'll be more bad than good, and you might as well use every single one of those snaps on Samori Toure and, I guess Amari Rodgers and just your younger receivers to try to get them as many reps as you can. Christian Watson, Dobbs when he comes back. And you might say, Andy, how can you cut Sammy Watkins? You've got all these injuries. Like Lazard is banged up. Dobbs is banged up. Cobb isn't back yet. And so on and so forth. You've got enough. Christian Watson's going to be fine and ready to go this week. Amari Rodgers is good to go. Alan Lazard is good to go. You've got 3 wide receivers on the practice squad. You will be just fine. So do what you need to do to change up the wide receiver room, but there is zero reason to have Sammy Watkins playing any more snaps at wide receiver for this team. It was awful. Aaron Rodgers, number 2 on my bottom rated players on offense this week, negative 2.60. And then Amari Rodgers, number 3, negative 1.00. So let's talk about Aaron Rodgers, because that's obviously going to be the key here and what everyone wants to talk about. I'll say it once again. In no way, shape, or form is this just Aaron Rodgers. And the hard thing here is that everyone can blame shift, because there is blame to go around everywhere. Very, very few people. Aaron Jones, mostly Rashawn Gary. That might be it. Of players that you're like, all right, they're playing really good football and we probably can't point a finger at them overall. Just about everybody else in that organization you can point a finger at and be like, hey, this isn't good enough. And you'd be right. So if Rodgers wants to, and I'm not saying he is, I'm not saying he isn't, I'm just saying if Rodgers wants to blame shift and say, or if any Rodgers supporter wants to blame shift and say, look at all this crap that's going on around me, he's right. Everything else around him is pretty much going to crap. And if Matt LaFleur wants to blame everything else, he could, even though there's obviously responsibility on his end as well. And same thing goes for Joe Barry, Adam Stenavich, every single player, Brian Gutekunst, the front office. Like, everyone is to blame to some capacity, and it's just not good enough overall. But where I was at with Aaron Rodgers early in the season, he's not playing well. We've seen this sort of happen for like beginning of seasons in the past. It's not going to be an issue down the road. He's still going to have a great season. He's still Aaron Rodgers. That's where I was earlier in the year. Then middle of the year, it's like, okay, this hasn't gotten better. It's still a struggle for him. It's not, he's grading, average at best. And while I don't think he is the cause of the issues, he has not been the solution to the issues, which is what you're paying him for. And you're paying him to elevate the play of the players around you, and he has not done that either. So it was disappointing, but I wasn't to the point where like he's the cause of the issues. Now, again, you can make the argument if you are paid that much and you're only playing average, then you are a major cause of the issue. And I'm not going to argue against that. There's a level of truth to that, obviously. But I didn't think if you just looked at his play, I didn't think you could look at Rodgers and be like, that's the guy that's causing all of the problems. Not generally. There's certainly times where there's a lot of issues, but I didn't think overall that was the case. Against the Lions, that was mostly the case. And there was everything else still. There was a lot of things going wrong, but you cannot be the supposed leader of this team, the guy making the most money, the back-to-back MVP, the player that's supposed to like basically give you like punch your ticket to the playoffs almost just by yourself. And I'm not like, obviously this is a team game. Other things need to go right, but that's what you're paying him to be. That's what he has been in the past. And that's what you're sort of expecting him out of him. And whether that's fair or not, we can make an argument for, but when you're in that position and when you have been basically wanting to be the leader and have some power and say over what's going on in this organization, the spotlight is on you. And it's okay to have bad games. No question about it. It's okay to miss throws. It's okay to have all of those things. Like, nobody's expecting Aaron Rodgers to be perfect. But when you are facing the worst pass defense in football, a historically bad pass defense, a very bad football team, and you have basically taken 24 points off the board with a bad throw to Allen Lazard, a bad throw to David Bakhtiari, a awful throw to Samori Toure, and an awful throw to Robert Tonyan, which should have been touchdown, 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 and at least still staying in field goal range. That's 24 points off the board that is on Aaron Rodgers. Was there pressure on the Bakhtiari throw? Yes. Did it sound like maybe somebody did something wrong up front? Didn't get a check call, didn't get a can call in the first play to Lazard? Yes. But those are like the biggest thing. One of the biggest things with this team right now is like nobody picks each other up. Meaning, if like there's plays where like Rodgers like will maybe miss a little bit, and then the receiver like has the opportunity kind of to catch it, but they still drop it. Or like Yash Nyman will miss a block, and then Runyan's there to pick it up, but like Runyan doesn't exactly pick it up. Like, nobody's helping out when like somebody else makes a mistake to sort of help and cover for it. Like, just the mistakes compound. And there's a lot of that going on overall, but we're seeing that with Rodgers as well. And yeah, there's pressure on the throw to Bakhtiari, but guess what? Even Aaron Rodgers fading away makes that throw 99 times out of 100. He gets it to Bakhtiari. Now, if Bakhtiari catches it and all those sort of things, that who knows? But the throw can't be 10 yards short and easily picked off by Aiden Hutchinson. That can't happen. So you have the goal line INT, the Bakhtiari INT, the Tonyan INT, and then the miss to Samori Toure. Those are the obvious ones. But there is another play where Samori Toure is screaming down the middle of the field, should be wide open for a potential huge explosive play. Rodgers doesn't identify it, doesn't pull the trigger. There's another play where Tonyan and Lazard are wide open down the middle of the field, and you'll start sensing a trend here. Rodgers doesn't like to throw and tends to avoid the middle of the field even when it's wide open. Doesn't pull the trigger. This one I'm willing to give a little bit more forgiveness. I think if you look at what he's looking at, I think if he would have gone through his progressions right, I think he would have got to it quicker. But also and it also looked like when he initially got there, he had the opportunity to rip the ball to Tonyan. But once he came back to it, I think he was going to rip to Tonyan, and Tonyan had turned around in a different direction, was no longer facing Rodgers for some reason. And I think he wanted to rip it there and just couldn't because Tonyan wasn't paying attention. But you've got two players easily wide open down the middle of the field, and I think had he gone through his progressions better, that's another opportunity. And then the big one, the one that I posted on Twitter, you've got Josiah DeGuara, who is coming wide open over the middle of the field. Dusty Evely did a phenomenal breakdown of the play. Go check out, I posted it on Twitter. You can also find Dusty Evely on YouTube as well. It's a 10-minute video that breaks down the play beyond perfectly. But the gist of it is, it's basically, there's a variety of things that can happen on the play, but it's basically a cover two beater where if DeGuara has the middle of the field open up, he runs down the middle of the field. You've got basically a dummy route. You've got a quick out route on that side, and you're basically reading, sort of left to right. And then you've got a under route that comes right underneath, which DeGuara would be a clear out if you're in man-to-man coverage, or if you have the middle of the field open underneath DeGuara. So again, go watch Dusty's video. He does a phenomenal job and breaks it, and he's going to spend a lot more time than I'm going to right here. But basically, Rodgers is reading left. There's nothing there, and he's also identifying quickly that this is two high safeties, cover two, and he comes back to DeGuara, and he looks at DeGuara, and what you want to look for here is the linebacker carrying DeGuara up the middle of the field, and did DeGuara do what he was supposed to do by basically running the seam? And DeGuara did, and the linebacker sat down, and it was extremely clear that the middle of the field and DeGuara is wide open, and that's the play. You rip the ball. You rip it every time. And you can see on the play, he is staring at DeGuara, and he is coming through the window of where you need to go with through the defender and into wide open spaces. There is nobody else threatening. He already checked the backside safety to make sure that that safety is going into cover 2 and going back to that side of the field. There's no safety in the middle of the field. He rips that ball. It's possibly a touchdown, at least a huge play. And he just abandons it. He panics. And there's a lot of happy feet. There's a lot of checking the line of scrimmage. There's a lot of plays he's not going through progressions. He's not, on a lot of the RPOs, he's predetermining the RPO before the snap. He's not reading it. There were multiple plays in this game where defender crashes and it should have been a pass to the outside, and he just hands the ball off anyway. Multiple times where it should have been easy read pass, and he didn't pass. He predetermined before the snap where he was going with the ball. This has been something that's been happening for a long time, but it was super noticeable in this game. He's just kind of going rogue and kind of doing his own thing, not always going through the progressions. And even when the progression's there, even when DeGuara is screaming open through the middle of the field, he's not pulling the trigger. He's not playing with confidence. And again, to some extent, understandably, the receivers are poor, at least not to the level that he needs them to be. The offensive line hasn't been to the level that it needs to be. But in this game, pass protection-wise, it was. They held up pretty darn well in pass protection in this game. Guys were getting open in this game. And that's why I say, in other games, I can understand he wasn't playing his best, but he wasn't playing like awful football to the point of like it's going to cost you games. This was a cost of a game by Aaron Rodgers, like to the point of, and you can hate on it if you want. I think they win this game with Jordan Love. They lose other games by a lot more with Jordan Love. There's no question about that. I'm not saying they'd be a better football team with Jordan Love. That's ridiculous. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying Jordan Love's in the league of Aaron Rodgers. That's ridiculous. I'm not saying any of that. They would have won this game with Jordan Love. I honestly believe that. That's where this game was at. That game was right there for the taking. Detroit played bad. They're an awful football team. And there was plenty of throws to be made by the quarterback in this game to go out and win a football game. And he couldn't make them. And it was the most concerning and disconcerting game that I've graded and watched for a variety of reasons. The just disjointedness, beating themselves, mental mistakes, yelling at each other, extreme frustration. It was all really bad. And that's the state of this current Green Bay Packer team. So that's that. Just to recap really quick, Rashawn Gary, Rasul Douglas, Isaiah McDuffie, honorable mention, Jair Alexander, top players on defense, Savage, Walker, Reed, and sort of dishonorable mention to Kenny Clark on defensive side of the ball as the lowest graded defenders. Offense, best, Yash, Elton, Mercedes, worst, Watkins, Rodgers, and Rodgers. That's going to do it for me today. I'll be right back here tomorrow, 365 days a year. Let's do it again. We'll talk some Packers. I have a couple things that I want to discuss, so we'll see what order of operation we go in, but should be a good one either way. No Pack-A-Day Live because it is Election Day, and please, please, please make sure to vote. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.